Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Military Mutterings, where I, Jack Fletcher, and my good friend,
Me, Kevin Jansen.
shall be discussing the Battle of the Drøbak Sound for its 80th anniversary. And we are very fortunate today to be joined by our Norwegian correspondent, if he would like to introduce himself.
Yes, hello. My name is Arvid Pedersen, and as Jack just said, I am their Norwegian correspondent.
Yes, he speaks the language of the Nords.
Yes,
Not the missiles, however.
I know where I am because I know where I'm not.
This is true. So, Battle of the Drøbak Sound. If Kevin would like to get us on to our next slide, we shall first discuss the phony war. Now, this took place between September 1939 and April 1940, and this was a period of time where nothing really took part in the Second World War, in the European campaign anyway. It was a time of much tension. Everyone was like, "Ooh, who's going to make the first move? Who's going to make the first move?" And on April the 9th, 1940, Germany decided to make this first move. First, at 5:20 a.m. in Norway, which is 4:20 a.m. for the Danes, an ultimatum was given by the German envoys in Oslo and Copenhagen to the Danish and Norwegian governments. The ultimatum was, accept the protection of the Reich or suffer the consequences, really, I suppose you could say. And whilst Denmark indeed were like, oh, okay, that's, okay, Norway wasn't really having any of it, to put it lightly. So, the first bit of action, eh? Could you, our wonderful Norwegian correspondent, discuss with us the first bit of action, being, of course, the Battle of the Drøbak Sound?
Yes. So the Battle of the Drøbak Sound, or Slagen om Drøbak started when the flotilla tasked with taking Oslo and capturing the Norwegian government and the king met a fortress which they thought was unmanned, but it wasn't. The fortress opened fire at around 4 o'clock in the night, 4 a.m., and it shot 2 rounds at the bleacher, lighting the ammo magazine on fire and knocking out its radar. After the fortress shot its rounds at the bleacher, it launched 2 torpedoes, one which hit the bow and one which hit midship, and 10 minutes later maybe the bleacher was sinking. The fortress was not able to open fire on the next ship in line, which was the Lützow, which was later renamed to Deutschland. It was a Deutschland class cruiser. They turned back and landed 10 miles further south than they should have. So that gave the government and the king and the royal family time to escape Oslo and flee for Sweden. Commanding officer Colonel Birger Eriksen of the Oscarsborg delivered one of the best lines in military history. Either I will be court-martialed or I will be honored. When the lieutenant asked if they're gonna fire, they might be friendly ships, and he didn't care because they were encroaching upon Norwegian waters, and therefore they should expect to be fired upon.
Something I saw about that too is the Norwegian rules of engagement didn't allow them to fire in anger. And the commander of the fortress actually allowed to fire right away without a first warning shot, because that force of German ships must have already passed other fortresses too to get there, and those fortresses would have most likely given them a warning shot.
Yes, that is indeed our rules of engagement. The Germans passed fortresses further down in the Oslo fjord because the Oslo fjord is kind of divided with an outer part and an inner part, and the Oscarsborg is guarding the entrance to the inner part of the fjord. So there is or was of another fortress further out into the fjord, which would have fired the warning shot, you can call it. And then they got a message from Oscarsborg, got a message from that fortress about a flotilla of warships. They didn't know if they were British or German. If they were British, they would most likely have been court-martialed for firing upon them.
It's just a very, very funny set of what do you call it? Like it's more coincidence, really. If they were British, they would have been court-martialed, and if they were Germans, they would have become heroes. It's a very 50-50 scenario.
It indeed is.
Now, I think
However,
it's time.
when it's a case of national security, one can kind of understand why such actions would be taken, I suppose.
Yeah.
And well, it's a good thing that they have commanders like that. They just said, well, screw it, we're firing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's time for us to go to the last bit, which is actually the sinking of the Blucher, which is probably the most well-known thing about this whole battle. So, like Arvid touched upon a little bit, the Blucher was fired upon by the fortress. The fortress actually had multiple 280mm Krupp guns installed, but these were very old ones from 1894, if I'm correct. And two of them actually fired at the Blucher. These guns were nicknamed Moses and Aaron. I quite like that too, where fortresses just name their guns.
Yes. Can I add something here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the fortress actually had 3 of the guns, but they only had enough crew to... The crew weren't trained, and they only had enough crew to crew 1.5 of the guns. Because
that makes sense.
they had received fresh conscripts 2 days before the engagement.
Well,
yeah.
Anyhow, all of the 3 guns were loaded apparently, which is kind of smart if you think about it. Like if you don't have enough to crew all of the guns at the same time, at least make sure they're all loaded. And these were loaded with 255 kilogram high explosive shells, which was, well, they're basically mini bombs if you just think about it. So the first 280mm shell hit the Blucher right in front of the aft mast and set the midships area up on the foremast on fire. The second 280mm shell actually hit the base of the forward 203mm gun turret, which actually threw a lot of parts of it into the fjord and igniting further fires on board. So pretty much, as you can see on this photo in the background, basically the whole ship was on fire at this point. Now, they wanted to fire a third time at the ship, but there was not enough time for this, because the guns could not be reloaded in time, and like Arvid just said, even though the third gun was reloaded, there just weren't any men on it. So they couldn't get there in time to actually fire the third round. But it was planned, but oh well. But the most interesting thing about this fortress actually had torpedoes as well. It was not just a gun fortress. 3 meters below the water, they had a battery of 3 torpedo tubes, or torpedo tunnels, I should say. So this was just one battery with 3 tunnels, and there were just 3 torpedoes loaded, and they actually had a second battery loaded behind it so they can quickly continue to load it. And in the fortress itself, there were 9 more torpedoes. And the Germans apparently did not actually know about these torpedoes, or at least they thought they weren't going to be used. Because the torpedoes used for this were actually very old, I think 40-year-old whitehead torpedoes from the Austro-Hungarian manufacturers. Which is, well, yeah, that is just extremely old. Well, the commander actually that was in charge of this torpedo battery, he fired 1 torpedo at the ship. And they didn't actually know for sure if the torpedoes were going to work, but luckily they actually worked perfectly. Although the original aim of the first torpedo was a little bit off, it did actually hit the ship, but it was more sort of in front of the ship itself. So it only reached about, well, what's it called? That's the bow of the ship, correct?
Yes, the bow.
So it hit the bow, it didn't really do a whole lot. So they corrected their aim for the second torpedo and they fired it. And guess what? It actually hit the exact area where one of the 280mm guns had hit as well. So that already damaged area just completely went up in a giant explosion, and all of the bulkheads just shattered, and water just started flooding the entire ship. Now they had another torpedo, like I just said, they had 3 torpedoes. They had a third one ready, but it was not going to be used, or there wasn't enough time to use it on the Blucher anymore. But they actually started reloading the other tubes as well, in case of all the other ships coming through. But only 2 torpedoes were fired on the Blucher. Well, as you can see on the photo, they actually anchored the ship somewhere. They tried to battle the fire, but it was out of control. It even set up the 105mm ammo storage. All of that went up in flames as well, and well, the ship was basically lost. And then actually a bit of a gruesome event. The ship completely capsized and went upside down, and the water around it got completely filled up with oil and all the other mess, and that actually got set on fire, which further killed and burned a whole lot of German soldiers in the water. Which is quite gruesome if you ask me. But pretty much in the end, the German force, like Arvid said, they retreated back to go to land somewhere. What was it? 10 miles before Oslo, to land there.
10 miles further south from Oscarsborg, so about 20 miles away from Oslo.
Yeah. And the Deutschland class heavy cruiser Lutzow was fired upon by 15cm guns from the fortress, which actually did manage to knock out the rear 28cm turret of the Lutzow, but that was pretty much where most of the action actually ended. So in the end, Blucher was lost by very, very old torpedoes. Yes.
And I suppose thank you, Kevin, for that detailed information. Does anyone else have any points to add regarding the battle?
Right. I just want to mention that in addition to the 2 guns or the 3 guns on Oscarsborg, there was also smaller batteries of 15cm guns on the mainland at the station of Koppos and Husvik that fired upon both the Blucher and the Lutzow.
Oh yeah, it was one of these 15cm guns that knocked out the rear turret, sorry.
And what's also rather interesting is that Lutzow is also the name of an Admiral Hipper class, which was sold to the Russians. And if you want to know any more information on that, please check out the video where we discuss in detail the Admiral Hipper class.
But I think the most interesting thing about this battle is just how well you can defend a little... Well, what is this called? Is this just a strait of water or a stream?
It's, a sound.
Yeah, like I like how well you can defend that with just one fortress with very outdated weapons.
Yes.
Like if you play your cards well, you can easily beat your opponent.
We are experienced at shooting upon people who try to take us out.
Indeed. Well, I suppose on that happy note, I should give a little announcement. Military Mutterings will continue to either weekly or bi-weekly uploads around the start of the month of May, I believe.
Yep, that's what we're going to be planning on.
Yes, where we shall begin Season 2 of Military Mutterings. So indeed, tune in for that if you, if that still tickles your fancy. Anyway, that... Oh, Arvid, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, please check out my channel. There will be a link in the description. There's a lot of stupid shit on there, and you might be lucky to see me upload something. I think there's been a month since the last time. It's like very small 16-second videos, so watching them does not take long. And
yeah, he's given TikTok a run for its money.
Yes, it will make you chuckle. I promise.
Like, be sure to check out the description in general, because we put our sources there, and links to me and Jack's other pages and stuff.
Our sources, which will be in Norwegian.
Good luck with that. Well, there's always Wikipedia to help you out.
Yes.
Yes, or you could find yourself a Norwegian correspondent. We found ours in a box outside of East Sheffield, probably.
Yes. Very roomy box.
Yes, indeed. Right, well, on that happy note, see you all at the start of May.
See ya.
You won't see me.